welcome back to all listeners. This is another episode of the Geo Trip. I'm Dr. Karen Prince, and I'm joined by my wonderful and only co-host, Geo. How are you today?
Doing great, Ryan. Just glad to be back and really excited about the topics we have up ahead this month.
Great. So we are launching something new today. 2025 just seems like a year full with new stuff, and I hope that you're enjoying it. So we have a new series in mind. And the inspiration behind this series is that we want to kind of break geology and geoscience down like we do in plain language, just to attempt to unravel some of the foundational topics that are critical to this discipline. So, to get you warmed up for today's episode, this mini episode, here's a scenario. Imagine a world in which cell phones did not exist. I was one of those kids who grew up in a generation where, like, I saw the introduction of the cell phone. Well, at least its rise in popularity. But I also know what life before cell phones was like. Is that the same for you?
If what was the same for me, like knowing about cell phones,
Like
or
having a period before cell phones became so ubiquitous?
I think I vaguely remember that, but my dad always had a cell phone, so he had one of those bigger ones. So, I guess to answer your question, not really sure.
I guess I'm just dating myself. I'm a little bit old. But cell phones revolutionize like at least the things that we carry on a day-to-day basis. Like think of all the functions that are packed into one cell phone, right? It's a camera, it's a telephone, it's a GPS. And cell phones as we know them would not exist without one particular material or one particular thing that we find on our planet. It's visible and yet it influences and touches our lives in so many invisible ways. And those things are called minerals. So just to give you an idea of how prevalent minerals are, in your cell phone, there are minerals such as copper. It's used for wiring and connectors. There's gold on the circuit board, used for its electrical conductivity. There's silver, also used for electrical pathways, aluminum on the exterior case of your phone. There's lithium and graphite in your battery. All of these things are minerals. So, minerals literally underpin our lives. So, that's what we want to get into today.
Perfect. And I think before we actually get into it, we should first kind of take a few steps back and just define what a mineral is, and the fact that when we think of a mineral, we're thinking of a naturally occurring inorganic element or compound which has an orderly internal structure and characteristic chemical composition, which means there's crystal form and physical properties that help us to identify these minerals. Because, like you said, Karen, when we think of our cell phones, and sorry, had to catch my brain and my memories there for a second. Yes, didn't know about cell phones, but it definitely wasn't as commonplace as it is today, which now we really cannot live without it. Just kind of want to really appreciate how fundamental such a development in such a everyday item that we take for granted has really changed and shaped how we explore and look for these minerals. So again, just making sure we know or define it as the fact that it's a naturally occurring inorganic element or compound that has an orderly internal structure and has characteristic chemical composition, crystal form, and physical properties.
Now that we are armed and dangerous with the definition of what a mineral is, let me let you know that minerals don't play nice. There are these five criteria that you must satisfy in order to be a mineral. And if you fail at even one of these, you're out. There's no best of five, it's all or nothing. So, with that in mind, Liaka, let me put you on the hot seat for a sec. Easy questions. I'm going to list three solid materials, right? Earth materials. And you tell me if they are minerals or not. Ready?
I think so.
All right. Glass. Could glass be a mineral?
Glass is not a mineral, and I feel like that's a little bit of a trick question because you said glass, and I immediately think about volcanic glass and take myself out of the running. But glass is not a mineral.
And it wouldn't be a mineral because it's mostly man made, right? So anything that isn't naturally occurring can't be a mineral. But what about volcanic glass? Would volcanic glass be included in the mineral club?
The trick question, because when you think of volcanic glass, what it actually, or what you're typically referring to, is obsidian, which is a rock type.
All right. So, although it could be naturally occurring, obsidian would violate one of those key criteria in that it lacks that ordered internal structure. So, obsidian, no mineral. All right. Here's an easy one for you. Would coal be considered a mineral?
So, as you said, there are some five components. We talked about it has to be naturally occurring. We talked about it being solid state, I believe. And another thing we have to be is inorganic. So, therefore, coal is not considered a mineral.
Ding, ding, ding. Coal need not apply. All right. And last one, diamonds. Diamonds, minerals.
I mean, diamonds are a girl's best friends. So, I feel like I should not even have to answer that. Diamonds are considered a mineral. It has a hardness of 10. And so after we talk about and it has a crystalline structure. So after we talk about the fifth criteria to become a mineral, I think we could tell them a little bit about most hardness scale.
So, yes, diamonds, correct. They are minerals, except lab grown diamonds. Although they are quote unquote real diamonds, they would pass a diamond test, they wouldn't be considered minerals. And they'd violate that principle that minerals have to be naturally occurring. And since these are made in a lab, then no, man made diamonds, totally diamonds, but they wouldn't be considered minerals. Good job, Gio. 3 out of 3. I like that. So you brought up this really interesting concept of like the Mohs hardness scale. And you mentioned that diamonds are actually a 10 on the Mohs hardness scale. So the Mohs hardness scale basically measures how like tough the hardness of a mineral. And we test that by basically trying to scratch these minerals. The softest mineral on the scale would be a 1, the hardest a 10, and 10, as we mentioned, is diamond, and 1 would be drumroll.
Whenever we're thinking one, we think of the softest mineral, and that would actually be talc, which has an arbitrary hardness of 1.
Yeah. And what did we used to use talc for? Do you know?
Man, there's so many uses for talc. Are you looking for me to go in a specific direction or just kind of some general talc uses in everyday life? Or talc, because you could use talc in cosmetics, you could use it in food, you can use it in medicine. So I'm not sure where you want to go with this because I do know these are supposed to be quick bites.
Yeah. So I think one thing that lots of people probably have used, but maybe didn't realize that this was a main mineral that was used in making it. Baby powder or talcum powder used to be made of talc. But for reasons we'll explore another time, we've since moved away from that and have replaced talcum powder with cornstarch base instead.
Yeah, and I guess another thing to point out while we've moved away from it in terms of like powders, it's still very much used in paper making, ceramics, lubricants, rubber, and cosmetics. But again, another whole conversation to have another day.
So the key takeaway here is that minerals are essential. They are the backbone of technology, circuit boards. Silicon Valley would not exist without minerals. And I like that you also touched on the beauty industry. Rihanna wouldn't be a billionaire if it weren't for minerals, right? So, minerals are foundational to life as we know it. And there's this really cool saying. It goes like this: if it's not grown, then it's mined. If you look around the room or space that you're in right now, if you don't see something that was made from a plant or from an animal, then chances are it involved mining. And as long as we're talking about mining, we're talking about minerals. So, minerals are, I consider them, the essential building blocks of the world around us. And I guess while we're talking about things or important uses of minerals, it's also important that we share as well that minerals are important for a healthy, functioning human body, right? Can you think of any minerals off the top of your head that the human body needs?
Definitely can. But before we actually segue to human body, I just kind of, I'm big on tie-ins and taking people back to just the foundations. You mentioned mining, and I just kind of wanted to stress on, even though this is just a mini bite, when we think about minerals, you want to think about extraction methods of those minerals, whether it's underground mining, surface mining, placer mining. And we had this really great episode July last year with George Cato, who was a geologist and the executive director at Africa Geological Center in Tanzania. And we went a little bit in depth on mining. So, listeners, please don't hesitate. Go enjoy that episode if you wanted to find out more about the extraction and then some of the conflict that associates with accessing these minerals and why it's so important because like my co-host said, we use them in phones. So hint hint, some geopolitics in there. But to answer and get us back on track, yes, I could think of a couple of minerals that are very fundamental. When I think about calcium, which you find in our bones and teeth. When I think about fluoride, which we use in toothpaste, and this is also why it's important to pay attention to what's happening because your state and federal regulations kind of discuss about how we are able to access fluoride and why all our teeth aren't falling out and getting tooth decay. How much more in depth did you want us to go, Kyron?
That's perfect. And I'll just add one more because I saw something really interesting recently that more and more people are experiencing iodine deficiencies because we started adding iodine to salt to help address this issue. And as more people move away from like traditional table salt to like a pink Himalayan salt and some of these other alternatives that aren't iodized, we're seeing more kids and adults as well showing up with iodine deficiencies. So minerals super important, the building blocks of society. They help support life. I'd say that's a pretty foundational aspect of the geosciences.
So very true. And when we say foundation, not only environmentally, but just like you said, within the body, because similar to the iodine, zinc, which supports immune function, wounds healing, taste, and smell. We're finding a lot of adults are also experiencing zinc deficiencies also. So just kind of something to think about where, yeah, there really is geology everywhere. It is the I do not want to get in my colleagues in other STEM arguments with my colleagues in other STEM fields, but it really is the everywhere, everyday science.
I think that's a perfect place for us to end. And if you'd like to hear more episodes like this, please send us your topics. All right. So you want to close us out, Gio?
First and foremost, just as usual, want to thank you, our listeners, for still rocking with us, pun intended. Because of you and all the feedback, we've been inspired to branch out into more specific geoeducation topics. So if you enjoyed today's conversation and you're looking forward to us exploring earth materials and the processes via this series, please do not hesitate to contact us with any suggestions or questions or curiosities. Send us a note. You can either tweet us at GeoTrip Podcast or email us at thegeotrippodcast at gmail.com. And just a reminder that geoscience is everywhere around us. So next time you're outside, next time you're eating, or even using that pencil or some chalk, take a look and think of the rocks, the mountains, the ground beyond your feet. Think about the mineral composition, and we will see you next month for another exciting episode. And yeah.
All right. Take care. See you next time.